Hello, I'm Kyra Savalainen, and I'm here with my team of Nick Blakey Puck, Caitlin Boyd, and Sanal Pala. Today, we'll be sharing findings from our usability testing and heuristic evaluation of the mystery game, Whodunit. Here's a walkthrough of what we'll be discussing today. First, we'll do a quick introduction of our game and what it's about. Then we'll segue into user testing and discuss our research questions and study protocol. Finally, we'll get into the key issues we found in user testing and our heuristic evaluation.
Alright, let's start with a quick introduction to our game. Whodunit is a mystery adventure game created by the indie developer group Studio Copral. Essentially, in this game, users embody the avatar Boolia, who is a newly deceased detective determined to solve her own murder. In order to solve the murder and help Boolia find peace in the afterlife, players must explore the town Bonkle and collect clues through possessing humans and animals in order to solve the mystery. Prior to our user testing, we conducted a heuristic evaluation of Whodunit in order to gain an understanding of potential friction points and issues in the game. Based on our evaluation, we identified 3 main issues with the game. Because of these significant issues identified in the tutorial, we decided to conduct user testing in order to find out how we could improve the user's experience in the tutorial and validate issues we identified in our heuristic evaluation. Before recruiting our users, we identified 4 key questions that reflected our user research goals. These questions were: is the tutorial unnecessarily difficult, and does it provide players with key skills relevant to the game? How quickly are players able to learn and apply these new skills? Did players experience negative physical sensations, such as nausea or disorientation when playing? And how well can players operate in the game when using a trackpad or other controlling system outside of the recommended mouse and keyboard combination?
Thanks, Caitlin. So in order to answer these questions, we recruited 4 people who are familiar with computer games, but not familiar with Whodunit, and who were able to participate in our research over Zoom with their voices, faces, and gameplay being recorded. Each of the 4 participants engaged in a usability testing session that was 1 hour in total. Prior to the meeting, we emailed users the consent form along with a Zoom meeting link and instructions on how to download the game Whodunit from itch.io. During the first part of the usability testing session, each participant received an introduction in which they learned about the research objectives. They were also asked to give verbal consent, answer some questions about their system setup that day, and complete a think aloud practice question in order to prepare them for gameplay. During the 30 minutes of recorded gameplay, participants engaged in the think aloud research method. This was supplemented by observation of body language, keyboard mashing, and tone of voice. Our research protocol allowed researchers to follow up with unscripted questions throughout the session. If the player did happen to make it past the tutorial, the researchers asked a couple of follow-up questions at that point about the experience so far in order to capture initial fresh thoughts while they were still top of mind for the participant. After the user had played for 30 minutes, the researchers stopped gameplay and began a semi-structured interview. The interview included questions like, how did you feel playing the game? And what was your experience using the levitate function? These questions were designed in order to gain specific insights on the user's experience that could supplement the think aloud portion and give the researcher a set of answers that could be compared against the answers of the other 3 participants. Finally, after the interview, we allowed a little bit of time at the end for the participant to ask any questions they might have and for us to thank them for their time. At this point, I'll turn the presentation over to Nick, who will walk us through 4 issues that emerged as priority areas: unclear visual instructions, difficulty controlling levitation, inconsistent and unresponsive controls, and a lack of help and guidance in the game.
After first introducing game mechanics by text, the game uses symbols based on a mouse and keyboard setup to convey key tutorial information. Each symbol is only introduced once, and then used later in combinations as players learn more complex combos to traverse the many obstacles. These led to identifiable problems in our research, where all participants used trackpads in their own preferred setup. Not only were the symbols that only illustrated mouse-based controls found to be confusing, but the symbols seemed to lack the clarity or detail players needed from them. Multiple participants were often unsure if their actions were matching those depicted by the symbols, such as being unclear as to whether or not symbols implied movement. Or one participant who, when faced with the symbol for levitation, said, "Ice cube? I'm just going to pick it up with my mouse." Here are a few examples of such issues.
I have to shake it. does that mean? Okay, so I'm finding these instructions confusing that are like listed here because it looks like I'm supposed to shake my mouse, but
Our recommendations are to consider providing visual demonstrations of new skills or tasks in action, in addition to their written and symbolic instructions. Providing previews of successful uses will give players a clearer baseline comprehension, and to modify the symbolic depictions to more closely resemble the actionable skill the player is being challenged to learn, and to do so with one or more depictions that represent both mouse and trackpad users. Levitation enables players to move objects through three-dimensional space. This is a critical component for traversal of obstacles and into new spaces. Unfortunately, levitation was a consistently problematic mechanic for all our participants. Participants frequently wondered if buttons were doing anything, and found there to be a lack of clarity as to when they were or weren't controlling an object. And even once successfully dropped, they discovered they could not get it back onto the ground. Unbeknownst to them, or to us as moderators, once levitated, objects will only ever truly fall back to the ground once they are sufficient distance from the player character. This then became its own problem when participants backed away from a location believing things would never drop, and twice said things along the lines of, "I thought it would stay, isn't that what the rules just said?" We recommend providing a visual preview demonstration of the full capabilities and limits of levitation in action to give players a clearer baseline comprehension of successful uses. We also recommend remapping levitation to not be the same as the camera controls, so that both can be moved independently. Once introduced to the ability to dash, where they tap shift for a brief boost of speed, and the ethereal ability to pass through certain fences, players are frequently given golden gates to dash through as a component of increasingly complex chains of obstacles. However, all participants found dash to be inconsistent and sometimes entirely unresponsive. All participants had to repeatedly attempt dashing, at almost every instance, before it would successfully get them through an otherwise impassable obstacle. This often resulted in participants button mashing and other expressions of frustration of what some described as a control that did not do what they wanted. Here is an example of such a case. We recommend providing a visual preview demonstration of the full capabilities and limits of dashing in action to give players a clearer understanding of successful uses, adding a flexible follow camera that will provide players more immersion as they follow the player character traversing through objects, and allowing for actions to take place in closer succession, especially jumping and dashing or moving, so that players can get a better grasp of the physical routine of combo moves.
When a new skill is introduced, instructions are provided via text bubbles or on a cloud, but the instructions can't be accessed again without exiting the game, with some instructions not being able to be accessed at all after they're first introduced. During the tutorial, participants expressed frustration at the lack of information and guidance, saying things such as, "I guess I'm supposed to do this," and "I don't know what to do next." One of the 4 participants got stuck at one point, spending 10 minutes there and unable to move forward in the game. No hints or guidance were offered, so they tried every combination of actions they could to attempt to move past the section. The video that will be shown next will show the point that participant 1 got stuck at. It shows them randomly trying things, rather than using the skill they were just taught to move forward in the game. To resolve the issue of players feeling lost or getting stuck at different points in the game, we recommend that a hint function be added so that players can access help when they need it. We also recommend that the instructions, which are briefly provided in the tutorial, are able to be revisited throughout the game so players can easily access them when needed. Now we'll take you through the minor issues we found. Control inputs are not remappable, which is an important accessibility consideration to allow more players to access the game. The same control is mapped to multiple actions, with those playing on a trackpad using it for both levitation and camera control, creating unintended consequences with one control being activated when players are trying to use another control. Players receive messages throughout the tutorial which ask, "Are you sure you want to return to Earth?" Participants found these messages confusing, but it didn't prevent them from moving forward. The final issue we found is that Whodunit provides no difficulty adjustments, with there only being one play mode for the game. This made it difficult for players who wanted to get through the tutorial to reach the rest of the game, but found the tutorial too challenging and confusing to complete. Thank you for your time.